The holidays are here, and it's the perfect time to slow down, get cozy, and make something with your own hands. Let's create a project that's fun and meaningful, something that feels extra special because you made it. The Merry Christmas Embroidery Kit is a lovely way to add a personal touch to your home, and it also makes a thoughtful gift, either as a kit for someone who enjoys crafting or as a finished handmade piece from you to someone special. The video that comes with your kit should be enough to guide you through the entire process. However, if you'd like extra support with certain steps, you'll also find additional videos in the description below. When it comes to materials, here are the things you will find in your kit. You will find one red shade and two green shades in case you'd like to explore more shades of green in your design. However, in this tutorial, we'll stick to using just one green shade. You'll also receive the printed fabric, lightly printed so it doesn't show after you stitch, and the embroidery hoop on which you will mount the fabric, the thread cutter, and the QR code linking to the full video tutorial. You will also receive the stitch and color guide, which will help you know which stitch and shade go where in the design. Of course, you can always mix things up and play with the colors to make it uniquely yours. Finally, your kit also includes the embroidery needle. Now let's learn how to mount the embroidery hoop. First, unscrew the embroidery hoop. Now place the fabric over the inner ring and then place the outer ring over it. Make sure that the printed design is centered in the embroidery hoop by aligning the midpoint of the words. Now press down the outer ring carefully and then tighten the screw. While doing this, pull the fabric evenly from all sides. One way to check if the fabric is taut is to tap it. It should sound like a drum when pulled correctly. Now let's move on to the embroidery floss. Your kit includes 3 colors. In this tutorial, we'll be using one shade of red and one shade of green. However, as discussed before, you're free to use both shades of green for different parts of the pattern or just stick to one based on your preference. To thread the needle, find the tip of the embroidery floss and very gently pull out the floss. You can also use the hoop to measure, taking about twice the diameter of the hoop and then cut it. Make sure it's not too long or too short. Over time, you'll find the right length that feels most comfortable for you. Each floss is made up of 6 strands, which you'll need to separate slowly to prevent tangling. For this project, use 2 strands for the lettering and 3 strands for the rest of the design. To separate the strands, gently pull out 2 strands from the rest of the floss slowly and carefully. Keep the remaining floss aside for later use. Now take the 2 strands you separated for the lettering and tie a knot at one end of the floss. If the knot feels too small, simply add another one. Use whichever knotting method you're most comfortable with. Once this is done, carefully thread the strands into the needle. Now make sure that the end of the floss that has the knots is the longer end and the shorter end of the floss is without any knots, as you see here in the video. The video will show you how to embroider the letter M. You can follow the same step for all the other letters in this pattern. To begin, bring the needle up at one end of the letter and make your first stitch. For the second stitch, bring the needle up a little further along the line. Then take it back down between the 2 points of the previous stitch by gently tucking the previous stitch aside to make space for the next one. This creates the stem stitch. Continue in this way, always bringing the needle down between the 2 points of the previous stitch. Work along the pattern with small even stitches. While stitching, the thread may sometimes slip out of the needle if it's not secured properly. To avoid this, make sure you hold both the needle and the thread together, especially when pulling the needle through the fabric. The back stitch is an optional stitch if you find it difficult to make stem stitches on curves. For a back stitch, simply finish the stitch at the end of the previous stitch instead of finishing it in between the 2 points of the previous stitch as you would with the stem stitch. You can see the video for reference. Watch the video carefully to see how the small stitches are made on the curves, especially where the back stitch is used. The back stitch is extremely easy and creates a smooth line, but make sure to use it only on curves. For straight lines, stick to the stem stitch, which gives a better texture for lettering. Now continue the remaining pattern with the stem stitch. Another tip is to keep your stitches very small, especially on curves. Long stitches make it difficult to follow the pattern smoothly. In lettering, we'll make the letters a little thicker to give them a more defined look. To do this, simply add another layer of stem stitch right next to the first one. You can see me doing that here, adding more stitches alongside the first layer to create the lettering effect. Now continue the rest of the letter M with the stem stitch. Based on the pattern, you can either stick to a single layer or add more layers to match the thickness of the letter. Keep watching the video and pause when you need to complete the rest of the pattern that is not shown in the video. Some lines in lettering are thinner, so we can stick to just a single layer. Just follow the thickness of the printed pattern to ensure consistency and to get the proper lettering style. Next, we'll see how to secure the floss when you are left with only 2 to 3 inches. You can follow the same steps when switching colors later in the pattern. Turn your hoop over and make 1 or 2 knots on an existing stitch to secure the floss. Keep the knot snug but not too tight, and make sure it's placed on the stitch rather than directly on the fabric. Now trim any excess floss, leaving a small tail so it doesn't unravel, and you are done. Go ahead and finish the entire letter M with the stem stitch as shown. Enjoy the music and pause whenever you need more time, or go back in the video if you'd like a reminder of certain steps. If you're a beginner, it's normal to forget the steps at first and for your stitches to go a little off track. That's why it helps to watch the steps a few times before settling into the rhythm of embroidery. The next stitch is an optional one. If you feel like the ends of the letter are not straight or even, you can make a small horizontal stitch to connect the different lines. This should be a very tiny stitch that simply ties the layers together at the end of the letter. Watch the video to see how small the stitches are that evens out the ends of the stitch. Now you can finish all the other letters in the same way. Remember that letters like R and E will be slightly trickier since they are small and have detailed curves. Make sure to use really small stitches when working on these lines. Next, let's move on to the twigs using the straight stitch and the stem stitch. Start by making your first stitch, then bring the needle up a little further along the line and take it back down through the middle point of the previous stitch, gently tucking the earlier stitch aside to make space for the new one. Once you've completed the middle line, you can make more stem stitches for the longer lines and straight stitches that meet neatly at the tip of the stem. Watch the video for a better understanding of these stitches. Pause the video and go ahead and finish all the twigs with the stem stitch and straight stitch. Now for the stems with leaves, we continue the stem stitch for the middle line before we move to the leaves. The leaf stitch is another beautiful and commonly used stitch, especially in botanical embroidery. To make the leaf stitch, make one straight stitch along the center line shown in the pattern, starting from the middle and ending at the top tip of the leaf. Now bring the needle up along the pattern right next to the center line and take it down just below the end of the first stitch. Now continue the same step from the other side, bringing the stitch down below the straight line at the same point as the previous stitch from the opposite side. Keep repeating this process all the way down. Essentially, you are creating V-shaped stitches that go along the sides of the leaf, with each line from both sides meeting neatly at the same point just below the previous set of stitches. As you stitch downwards, you will notice that the stitches gradually become shorter. Keep working all the way down. A few things to keep in mind. Always stitch along the leaf outline and make sure your stitches meet neatly just below the previous set. This will give your work a cleaner finish and make it resemble a natural leaf. Now go ahead and complete all the leaves and branches in this pattern. Let's move on to the next stitch, the French knots. The French knot is often considered one of the trickier stitches, but with a little practice it becomes much easier. Once you get a hang of it, you'll notice how beautifully this stitch adds texture and detail to a variety of patterns. To make a French knot, it's best to use a table or an embroidery stand, since you'll need both hands for this stitch. To begin, pull the needle through the fabric where you want the knot. Now hold the needle with one hand and the floss coming out of the fabric with the other, and wrap the floss around the needle twice. Place the needle back into the fabric at the same spot and pull the floss downwards, allowing the wraps to slide down the needle towards the fabric, and then pull the needle through. Be sure to keep the floss secured with your other hand on the hoop, guiding the stitch neatly below. This is your French knot. Now go ahead and complete the border of the circle with French knots. Make sure the wraps are not too tight but just snug on the needle. Another tip is to make sure your thread is not too short, especially when you're learning. Using a longer floss can be easier to work with in the beginning. Go ahead and fill the circle with French knots. Here you can see that I have completed the border of the circle with French knots, and now I will finish the inner circle with French knots as well. You can go ahead and complete all the circles or buds with French knots. Now the next step is to frame your embroidery work on the hoop. To do this, take any embroidery floss with all the strands. The length of the floss can be around 2.5 times the size of the hoop. To be safe, I've taken 3 times of the hoop, but you can go ahead and make it slightly shorter too. Now thread the needle with the floss and make a knot or two at one end. Make sure there are 3 to 4 inches of thread below the knot, as you will need this later. Now we'll do the running stitch from the top of the hoop, leaving a little gap from the edge. These are really loose stitches that simply go up and down, leaving a good amount of space between each stitch, as you can see in the video. Make these running stitches all around the hoop. They should be loose and the fabric must not wrinkle as you stitch. Once you reach the top, close to where you started, turn the hoop over. Now pull one end of the floss tightly and the fabric will gather and hold securely at the back of the hoop. Now take the 2 ends of the floss and make a couple of knots until you are sure that the floss is snug and holding the fabric firmly in place. Cut any extra floss, and with this you have completed all the steps of your Christmas art piece. This beautiful festive artwork can now be displayed in your home or even given as a gift to someone special. Thank you for purchasing this kit and coming to the end of this festive artwork. You can always find more embroidery kits on our website if you'd like to continue this calming practice of embroidery. Wishing you a Christmas filled with joy, moments of calm amidst the festive rush, and a touch of handmade magic. Merry Christmas!